Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us for today's Select Science webinar titled Initiating, Building and Growing Compound Management at a Small Biotech. My name is Jemima Arnold and I'll be moderating today's presentation. I'm delighted to be joined by our guest speakers, Gina Prophete, Manager of Sample Management at Accent Therapeutics, and Kenneth Sweezy, Product Specialist at SPT LabTech. This webinar will discuss the past and current stages of Accent's compound management growth, as well as future plans for infrastructure improvements. Following the presentation, we'll have time for a question and answer session. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit these in the box to the right of your screen. Without further delay, I would like to hand over to our speakers, Gina and Kenneth, and I would like to thank them once again for presenting for us today.
I am recovering from a cold, so please excuse me if I have to take a moment to drink a sip of water or clear my throat. So again, sorry to start over, but my name is Gina Prophete. I am the Manager of Sample Management at Accent Therapeutics in Lexington, Massachusetts. And today I'm going to be talking to you about initiating, building, and expanding compound management at a small biotech company. So what I thought I would do is first introduce you to Accent, talk about compound management considerations as a whole, could dive into building Accent compound management, take a look at a couple of case studies and how we solve those, as well as look at the future of compound management at Accent, and then wrap up with a few concluding remarks. So who is Accent Therapeutics? So Accent is a small molecule oncology research company. We are focused on mostly RNA-modifying proteins, or RMPs, such as DHX9 and ADAR. We are well supported both in financial terms and scientifically via strong investor and strategic partnerships, as well as a really well successful drug development team. Now, Accent's integrated capabilities and platform expands a broad spectrum of capabilities from novel target validation and discovery, as well as driving drug development in order to advance RMP-focused drugs. And so, of course, compound management enables research across the portfolio. Now, Accent's focus has evolved as the company has matured. So we were founded in September of 2017. And since then, we have discovered high-value RNA-modifying protein targets. And we have built capabilities to be able to prosecute these targets. And as of June 2023, we are focusing on driving toward the clinic, and we have 2+ programs that we are hoping to get into the clinic. So as Accent has evolved, compound management has also evolved in parallel with the company's success. And I would like to say that if anyone's interested in Accent more as a whole and what we do, please visit our website at accentttx.com. So now I'm going to shift a little bit into the meat of this discussion. So compound management. So as you think about growing or building your compound management department, there's sort of 4 things you need to think about. So the first thing is, what do you have? Where do you have this stored? How much do you have? And you need to have a means of distributing this. Because at the end of the day, compound management can be defined as the oversight and distribution of compounds to researchers for data generation via assays. So we sort of think of all of this in 4 different buckets here at Accent. So we think of compound inventory, the equipment, the software, and of course the people. So in terms of inventory, what I mean by that is we're thinking about the type of compound, the amount of compound, and whether we want to store this in-house at Accent or we're storing it at a CRO. In terms of equipment, depending upon the stage of the company, you need to think about whether you need multifunctional equipment for a lab or you are ready to purchase compound management specific equipment. Also, you might want to think about if there are steps in the process that should be manual or if you want to automate everything. And as always, you need to think about whether this is scalable as the company grows. Likewise, with software, we want to think about compound registration, your inventory and how you're going to track all your samples, as well as other general LIMS systems. And of course, the people to run the compound management group. So you need to look at the background of these people. Do they have the experience in compound management or not? Or are these people you'll need to train? Are you thinking about getting full-time employees, or are you considering contractors? And finally, is this going to be CRO-based compound management or Accent-based? And the reason why I bring that up is because Accent actually operates with a mixed model for research. And what I mean by that is we have research that is performed in-house at Accent as well as external CROs worldwide. So if you take a look at this map, Accent is in pink over in Massachusetts. And as you notice, we have compound synthesis, which is the gray flag, happening in Canada and also in China. Likewise, the compound storage, which is the purple flag, we have some compound storage happening in the United States as well as in China. And as you can see, your data generation, which are the green flags, are kind of spread across the globe. So whatever compound management solution we come up with needs to be able to serve the internal processes as well as the needs of the CRO. But of course, having this mixed model means that there's a complicated sample of supply logistics. So Accent right now has its own internal compound management. Also, we work with a US-based compound management CRO as well as Chinese-based compound management CROs. And you can imagine there's pros and cons for each. So with Accent's internal compound management, the pro is that it's fast turnaround. We can be very flexible with plate and sample requests, and we can easily track the samples in real time. The problem with this, though, is that because we do not actually make samples on site, we are kind of limited by supply. Also, we are a small company, so we have limited equipment and only 2 dedicated full-time compound management employees. With our US-based CRO, the great part about them is that they are able to process large sample requests. Also, because they are within the US, the domestic shipping of the assay-ready plates and sample aliquots. And so this means there's a fast turnaround. However, any new protocols that we need to establish at these US CROs can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Also, they tend to have pretty set schedules, and that can further delay any compound deliveries to Accent. And finally, with our Chinese CRO, the pros of in this case is that they are co-localized with synthesis and screening CROs within China. So that means that our data arrives a lot faster. Also, this means the domestic shipping toward the CROs. However, if there's sample shipments that need to go to the US, this means that we're dealing with international shipping, which means there's time constraints and also customs issues. Also, sometimes there can be a delay in communication because of the time difference, and also we may notice differences in inventory based on the time difference. So as I mentioned, pros and cons exist for every compound management option. All right, so now let's dive into actually building compound management at Accent. So if you remember, Accent was started in 2017, and those 4 tenets that I mentioned in the beginning, you will notice that will be repeated throughout the rest of this presentation in terms of compound inventory, software, people, and equipment. So let's first start with the inventory. So at first, Accent started with just a limited number of purchased compounds, and we had a global footprint with a few of our external CROs. In terms of software, essentially there was no software. Compound requests were submitted only by email, and all metadata for the compound were tracked with Excel spreadsheets. We did hire an FTE with experience in compound management, operations, and informatics. And he was actually the 7th employee hired within 3 months of receiving funding. So at this point in the first year or so, Accent only had between 4 and 15 employees, and we were only working with one compound management CRO. And in terms of equipment, again, no equipment at Accent that was compound management specific. And in fact, we relied completely on the CRO's compound management for routine operations. And so now, as Accent's portfolio is growing, so does compound management has to grow. So the next couple of years, I consider our building phase. So again, these 4 tenets are kept into place. So compound inventory, right now at this point, we have started synthesizing our own proprietary compounds. So we have a growing inventory of these proprietary compounds. The storage of these compounds are mirrored at both Accent and at the CROs. And we made sure to use bulk-coated tubes and vials for all the samples so that they could be easily tracked. And speaking of tracking, we had to increase our software. So we employed using ArcSpan for compound registration, Sigillion software for compound request, data analysis, and visualization, and Xavo to manage our compound inventory. Likewise, we also hired our first fully dedicated compound management employee. And at this point, Accent has about 15 to 50 employees, and we're only working with 2 compound management CROs. And then in terms of equipment, we were still growing, so we wanted to get liquid handlers that had wide application that not exactly compound management specific, but could be used across the whole research lab. Now I'm going to dive into these equipment in the next couple of slides. So first is the SPT LabTech Apricot PP5. Now, the Apricot provides compound management functionality and flexibility, but more importantly for Accent at the time, it was able to be used across multiple departments. It's relatively inexpensive and it was extremely flexible. But compound management specifically used this piece of equipment for dilution plate creation. So we basically generate dilution plates containing 1 volume of the MSO across the plate, and also to create our mother plate. So we had our samples added to 1 column and then serially diluted across the plate. The other equipment we bought was an SPT LabTech Mosquito, the low volume version. And that's because this enables production of assay-ready plates by compound management and other departments. Now, the Mosquito is pretty easy to program, so that means that it enables users across our research to be able to create their own assay-ready plate. And again, it's low volume dispensing, so that means it's really ideal for assay-ready plating. So where's Accent compound management at the moment? So as I mentioned before, we are heading towards the clinic, or we are on our way there. So in terms of compound inventory, what we did was we've created a disaster recovery backup set of all of our compounds to date, and these are being stored at an external CRO. We are also involved in large-scale compound storage to support some of our later stage programs. Likewise, we had to improve our software. So we have integrated both our inventory software and our request system to help data flow much easier. We also have brought in Benchling for inventory tracking of other type of biological reagents, such as proteins and plasmids and cell lines. And it's also serving as a notebook for us as well. And then in terms of people, we did hire an additional full-time compound management employee who also came with informatics experience, specifically with the Xavo and Sigillion software program. And at this point, Accent has about 58 employees, and we are working with 3 compound management CROs. In terms of equipment, we then purchased dedicated compound management specific equipment, such as the SPT LabTech BioMicroLab tube sorter. And this allows for tube consolidation in order to be able to create our assay-ready plate much faster. and with less error. Also, we purchased the TCAN for solubilization of our compounds, the DMSO stack, and also to create serially diluted mother plates. So right now, I think I'd like to take a second to discuss a couple of case studies. So case study number one, like most companies, the pandemic challenged the Accent working model. So the challenge is Accent then had to shut down all internal research activities. What that meant was there's minimal or no lab work taking place at Accent. However, we still had multiple research programs that need to progress without delays. So the way we solved this was we established additional relationships with our US-based compound management CRO and coordinated compound shipping logistics between our Chinese CRO and the US-based CRO. And I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in the next slide. So there's quite a bit on this slide, but if you work with me from left to right, so our compounds are all synthesized at Chinese CROs, and they are aliquoted into tubes with small amounts in tubes, which will be used for automatic solubilization to make DMSO working stock. And then we also have an aliquot in a vial, usually about 5 to 10 mg, and that is to go usually for storage. So what we did was we had one tube sent to the Chinese CRO compound management group, and this would be used for weekly biochem, biology, and ADME assays. And then the second tube would be shipped to the US-based compound management CRO to be used for US-based biochem, biology, and biophysical assays. And likewise, the vials would be shipped to one vial will be shipped to the Chinese CRO for compound management for SPR, crystallography, PK studies, and then the final vial with anything remaining will be shipped to Accent, essentially used for long-term storage, but also eventually for SPR and just additional stocks for other assays. So what we had to do essentially is to maximize the compound supply at the compound management and screening CROs in order to generate data during the active phase of the pandemic when Accent was not functioning at normal capacity. So now let's shift to a second case study. So during the pandemic, we noticed that shipping logistics were delaying data for one of our really high priority programs. So let me just walk you through this kind of busy slide. So essentially, compounds were synthesized in China. However, the biochemical assay for this high program was located in the United States. So if you remember, we outsourced our plating to the US-based CRO so that we could directly ship to the US-based screening CRO. The problem is our US CRO could not ship their compound salvation date. So if this whole situation stayed as expected, we would get data generated within 2 weeks after the compound was shifted. But as you can imagine, a delay at any step in this process caused further timeline delays by a whole week. And of course, as we noticed, as many of us know, compound shipments from China were delayed more than 50% of the time. So our solution to this was to shift to Accent plating for this specific high priority program. And what that means is that because compound management internally is much more flexible, we were able to prioritize plating of this priority program. And so that resulting in no shipping delays, and in fact, reduced our timeline to getting data by a whole week. Now, I just want to also mention that in order to do this, we also had to revalidate some of the biochemical assay because there's a difference in plating equipment between our US-based CROs and internal Accent compound management. So we had to make sure that we validated those data, the biochemical assay, make sure there were no differences seen in the rank ordering of the compound. We even had to create a new assay in our LIMS software in order to be able to distinguish the plating sites for the project team to be able to analyze the data. So in order to make this happen, we obviously had to shift around our compound workflow. So again, working from left to right, the compounds are made at the Chinese CROs, again, split into tubes and vials, but this time a tube was shipped to the Chinese CRO as normal, and also the second tube was shipped to Accent, so that Accent could create use for biochemical, biology, biophysical assays. And again, the vials were shipped as normal. Also, large-scale compound storage has a different workflow. Essentially, again, we had to maximize our compound supply at optimized locations in order to progress the programs forward. And I would say this is sort of a general overflow of how we ship our samples, and this varies from project to project. We are constantly revamping this as needed. So now let's shift and take a look at compound management's future at Accent. And again, we're keeping these 4 tenets in mind at every step of the way. So the first thing is, in terms of compound inventory, we could imagine that we would be looking forward to proprietary focused library collections, and also in partnership with the CMC group, storage and management of all these large-scale compound supplies for in vivo studies and also to support non-GLP toxicity studies. Likewise, with our software, we are considering building more integration between our existing software via API where possible, just to help data flow much more smoothly, and also keeping in mind any new software trends. In terms of people, we intend to utilize internal and external resources effectively and hire appropriately to support Accent's pipeline. For equipment, obviously, we would like to get more compound management specific equipment. And one thing we're considering is a automated tube storage and retrieval instrument, such as the SPT LabTech compound, but we're also considering other things, such as the Hamilton Verso. So with that, I would just like to kind of wrap up. So compound management is an essential part of any organization focused on the development of small molecules for therapeutic use and should be considered at the outset of the company. Accent's research programs and infrastructure were enhanced by the early investments made in compound management. And Accent compound management capabilities have adapted to the needs of the research organization as the company's pipeline has grown and matured. With that, I'd like to just say thank you to Accent Therapeutics. I would like to give a special mention to Zach Burke. He works with me daily in compound management and makes sure that our workflow goes as expected. I would also like to call out Shatura Jayakody with Sigillion Software, our informatics consultants, Bill Jansen and Jesse Martin, and also the Zavo software and the Sigillion software team. And with that, I will pass that on to the next presenter, and I look forward to questions later. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm just going to run through the rest of our portfolio real quick. I won't repeat anything that Gina already went over, but just want to sort of round everything out so that you can see how what we were able to do to help everyone at Accent and what we might be able to do to help with you. So as she said, much of our company goes between compound management and liquid handling. So to start in liquid handling, for those of you that may be familiar with SPT, some of our most popular legacy instruments you'll see on the left here is our Dragonfly and our Mosquito. The Mosquito that Accent has as well comes in a couple different versions. But what's really unique about these instruments, the Dragonfly is going to be low volume, non-contact, positive displacement dispenser. So saving a lot of worries about contamination, things of that nature. Comes in a couple different versions as well, but is able to get down into the nanoliters as well. And that positive displacement is what enables you to do that. The Mosquito runs on the similar positive displacement technology. Not quite a dispenser. It also has aspirate capabilities, and I'll get in a little bit more about that as we move forward here. Apricot, which again, the PP5 is the instrument that Gina has at Accent. was a standalone company for anyone who may be familiar, and purchased by SPT about 2 years ago to what we would say round out our higher volume. So this is going to be up into the hundreds of microliters up to 1 mil. You see a photo, that's our S3. Again, the name of the game is really small footprint, relatively low cost, but high versatility. Again, things that Gina touched on and why they went with the PP5, just a slightly larger system. And then we're very excited. 2 years ago at SLAS, we launched our new flagship product, our most versatile, which is our Firefly. You see in the bottom right there, a more traditionally enclosed liquid handler, but one that actually combines the positive displacement dispensing of the Dragonfly with the air displacement pipetting capabilities of the Apricot system. So very, very exciting product right there, and many of them out the door in this first year. So we'll definitely be able to provide additional info for anyone who may be more interested about that, but one that's very versatile, again, with multiple levels of decks, and we're going to add really end-to-end capabilities, and add hotels for plate storage, thermocyclers, all sorts of things for the future. So we're very excited about that. Just to round out the topic of our positive displacement systems, you see here again the Mosquito, which has low volume and high volume capabilities like Gina touched on. And as I discussed that positive displacement, the tips are, as you see here, sort of unique. It's that spool that's at the top there that holds a few thousand tips. And the animation on the right there shows the tips. It's a metallic component in a plastic sheet that enables it to basically be liquid class agnostic with that positive displacement. And getting down into the nanoliters, we built these to be extremely accurate, extremely precise. And anyone who's been able to use one knows that that's what the instrument itself is known for. So moving on to the Apricot range, again, you see the larger photo in the middle there is the PP5, which Gina touched on and that they have in their lab. You see it's a 5-deck position, a really versatile instrument. The Apricots can go between 384 and 96 tips. They also have the capability for column and some row capability as well. So you can rack it in 8 tips, 16, or 12 and 24 as well. So up in the top right, again, that's our most popular, our S3, which enables you to switch cores, load tips. What's really unique about the Apricots, I would say, that separates it from a lot of other benchtop models is, one, our proprietary tip loading, which is that second photo down on the right there. You see it's 96 tips or 384, whatever it may be, racked with a specialized plastic collar that you slide into this tip frame, and then you front load it, which you can see in that next photo down. And then the bottom photo sort of shows what the internal components, what we name our cores, are able to do. So it's going to be all, it's non-variable, all the pistons moving together, but enable you, once those tips are loaded on, to have full pipetting capabilities. Really anything you can do by hand, you can do on these instruments. So that's, optimizing for any sort of liquid classes. Even though it is an air system, these instruments are extremely powerful and accurate as well, and have a long legacy of 20 years. So happy to answer any additional questions about that afterwards as well. Obviously, the name of the game today is sample management. So just to dive in briefly about what we can offer with those solutions as well as acquiring Apricot a couple years ago. SPT acquired a company called Biomicrolabs, if you're familiar with that, another US-based company. See some of their capabilities here. Gina talked about the XL systems, which is the larger system that you see down there. This one, you're able to kind of pick and play here, add on modules that may be scanning, barcoding, weighing, rearray tubes. You can even get an additional single channel liquid handling attachment, which allows you to do simple operations in and out of tubes as well, capping, decapping. So the sample management, particularly tube management in the Biomicrolabs range, is the capabilities are very diverse. So anything that you have on that end that you may be looking to automate, as this is obviously very timely, and hand labeling or tubes and things of that nature can be very, costly time-wise for your staff. So things that we can all automate. You see the standalone scanners and cappers, decappers on the right as well. And then the other system for BML that's very popular is our volume checks. So we can volume check many tube types as well as 96 and 384 well plates. What's so unique about our systems is it's acoustic based. Which is very unique. So you're not getting any sort of sample degradation or anything like that. but a very unique system that is able to be calibrated to your reagents, your labware, and whether that's, it's popular for receiving external samples or anything you may be needing it for, or even auditing purposes. So that's another instrument that can be very, very helpful as well. Gina touched on that they may be adding a compound in the future. We have two versions of our low temperature liquid storage, one being the compound, which is our -20, and the Arctic, which is our -80. Again, fully automated, so no doors to open or close. The retrieval is fully automated. So this is going to be tubes only, as it comes with a unique storage system and an air system that actually enables you to call back any of the couple 100,000 tubes that you could store in here. So very unique systems. And again, also add-ons coming to these for additional storage and additional capabilities as well. So if you're looking to store tubes at low temperatures, definitely something that we could talk about as well. I just wanted to reiterate a thank you for everybody attending today. I hope that I was clear with kind of what our portfolio is and how it can help you, and whether it is another small biotech, pharma, academic, anything. We always have something that is, fits into your budget that it can help you. I do have my email address on here, but I'm sure that with any questions, we'll be able to reach out to you as well. And thank you, Gina. I look forward to, if you guys have any additional questions for Gina, please put them in the chat, as she is a wealth of knowledge. So thank you guys again.
Thank you for that very informative presentation, Gina and Kenneth. It is now time for our question and answer session. So if you have any further questions, please do send those in. You can submit these by typing into the questions box to the right of your screen. So to start us off today, the first question we have is, can you say more about how you chose your LIMS system components? What other options are there for software, and what are the benefits and disadvantages of each?
Okay, so that sounds like a question for me. Okay, yes, as you think about your LIMS system, you need to think about the stages that your company is at. So you also need to think about what you want the LIMS for. So are you just looking for something for inventory, or would you like to be able to submit requests? And so in terms of thinking like that, you also need to think about whether you have the right support to manage all these systems. So for Accent at the time, we were limited by budget. And also we're a small company, so we do not have the full IT support. So we knew we needed something that we could manage. So we chose to break up our inventory and request systems rather than go for something that was all in one. But obviously you can look at something that's more all-in-one. The only problem is that these tend to also be costly, and you definitely need the IT support, because as you can imagine, if something goes wrong with one part of it, then this means that you are delayed in terms of fixing the issues that come up. Another option is that some companies actually build their own LIMS system internally, but of course that means they have the support to be able to troubleshoot any issues.
That's lovely. Thank you, Gina. The next question we have for you is, do you use consultants for any CM work? And can a qualified consultant take the place of in-house CM for managing external CM CROs?
So I would say the simple answer to that is yes to both. So as I mentioned throughout this whole presentation, Accent uses a mixed model for research. So that means that we have compounds that are in-house, and also we have compounds at multiple CRO locations. And as I mentioned, during COVID, we actually had to lean heavily on one of our CM US-based CROs for our compound management work. Also, because we're smaller, we do not have a designated informatics person. So we have had to hire like a consultant to help us with that side of compound management work. What else? We've also thought about potentially reaching out to our external CROs to have them help us manage the compound management on their side. But so the answer is yes. You can have a consultant take the place of someone in-house running your external compound management CROs. So it works both ways. It really is dependent upon the company's needs.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Gina. The next one we have is someone asking if you can describe the process a bit more for your selection of CRO partners, specifically asking how you found the ones that you decided to use, what you learned as critical factors for establishing a good partnership, and also how long it took per site.
All right. Yeah. So first, I think I would say that I am not usually involved with selecting the CROs, but what I would imagine is that, again, you need to think about what you want from this CRO. What are you asking them to do for you? What task you would like them to fulfill for you? And honestly, the best thing to do is to go visit, because they can only say so much. And there have been situations where, just because they say they have compound management, it doesn't mean that they're not doing a lot of things manually. So it would be a good idea to go visit the site, make sure you really see how they manage their day-to-day, and also be sure that they have the systems in place to be able to transfer this information to you easily. I think that's about it.
Thank you. So another one we have for you is, in your opinion, what would you say is the most challenging tasks, the most diligence in running a compound management system in a mixed research model for your various programs in your experience?
Yeah, so I think probably the most difficult or most challenging thing is to manage the inventory at all the different sites that we have. Like I mentioned, there's many pros and cons to each, right? And it's not only managing them, it's to manage them in real time. So you're constantly having to coordinate with the CRO partners, and also internally, and also working with the software team to try to make sure that the data matches across the board. Because as you can imagine, if there's any discrepancy in inventory, then this causes delays with scientists requesting assays, and just further delays your work. So I would say that is extremely challenging, just managing that across the board.
Thank you for that insight. The next one we have for you is, what US CMCRO are you using now?
So I'm not really sure that I'm able to share that, but maybe I will talk with my internal team first before I get back to you on that. And I'm happy to share my contact info. Maybe I could put that in the chat if someone wants to reach out to me.
No worries, thank you. Then I think the final question we have for the day is, how many lab staff or operational staff does Accent Therapeutics have? So how small is this small company?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How many lab staff or operational staff does Accent Therapeutics have?
Yeah, I don't think I heard that one. I'm sorry. And I noticed it disappeared from the chat. So what was the question again?
How many lab staff or operational staff does Accent Therapeutics have?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're really small, but we actually have 3 lab ops people helping us. And then we have one, it's just me and one other compound management employee, but otherwise we have 3 lab ops employees.
That's beautiful, thank you. So we have one last question, which is somebody asking about your contact info, Gina.
Absolutely, yes, I can provide that. Where's the best place to provide that?
I think right now it might be easiest for us to follow up with our email,
Okay.
and then we can get your contact email out to people if they would like it.
Yes, that'd be great.
We don't have the ability to do that right now, but I would like to thank both you and Kenneth again for taking part with us today, and for everyone joining us online. We hope you have found this a worthwhile session, and sorry about some of the technical difficulties we ran into. So if you do have any further questions, please feel free to email me at editor@selectscience.net, and I will follow up with your questions for our speaker. And remember, you can download related resources in the tab to the left of your screen, and this includes the certificate of attendance. If you'd like to listen again to today's webinar or invite a friend to listen, it will be available to watch on demand in just a few days. Goodbye, and thank you once again for joining us.